This conference will
Hello?
now be recorded.
Audio available and
హలో వినపడుతుందమ్మా?
Yes, ma'am.
హలో, ఓకే, కెన్ ఐ స్టార్ట్ ద క్లాస్? Hello, today's class is on preterm labor. Coming to the definition, if the labor occurs prior to 37 completed weeks of gestation, hello, if the labor occurs prior to 37 weeks of gestation in pregnancy beyond 20 weeks of gestation, that is between 20 to 37 weeks of gestation, it is known as preterm labor. After 37 completed weeks, it is called term labor. Okay, there are two definitions which you have to know are threatened preterm labor. Here the contractions will be pursued by the patient, but there is no cervical changes. So when uterine contractions are pursued, in absence of cervical changes, then we will call threatened preterm labor. Established preterm labor is she had regular uterine contractions, 4 in every 20 minutes or 8 in 16 minutes, with changes in the cervix, that is cervical effacement and dilatation will be more than 1 centimeter will be present. So here we will have uterine contractions and cervical changes like effacement and dilatation will be present. So before 33 weeks, it is called early preterm. 34 to 36 weeks, it is preterm, late preterm. Okay. So what are the causes for this preterm labor? It can be spontaneous, unexplained preterm labor, or idiopathic preterm labor, or due to maternal fetal conditions. These are the usual causes. Before going to the preterm labor, you should know the parturition cascade. What is it? There will be activation of the fetal hypothalamo-pituitary adrenal axis. HPA activation will be present whenever a patient goes, whether it is preterm or term, the process is the same. So hypothalamus will release CRH, that is cortisol releasing hormone. It acts on fetal, from fetal pituitary, ACTH will be released, and from adrenaline, cortisol will be released. The increased secretion of cortisol that leads to production of estrogens, and even from the DHEA, from the liver, under the action of DHEA, estrogens also will be produced. So what does these estrogens do? Estrogens, what they will do? They act on the mother hypothalamus. They cause increased release of oxytocin. And not only the oxytocin, where they will present these oxytocin receptors, usually they will present at the fundus. Mainly all over the uterus they will be there. They are more predominant at the fundus of the uterus. Oxytocin receptors will be increased. Oxytocin will be increased, and also the oxytocin sense receptors are also increased. Not only that, there will be release of prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are also released, and there will be increased secretion of prostaglandins, increased gap junctions, and stretch receptor number and sensitivity are increased in the mother. Coming to the placenta, these estrogens will cause release of oxytocin here also. Prostaglandins from amnion, chorion, decidua, and myometrium. These prostaglandins will be released here. And these are the key cells for the uterine contractions. What are these prostaglandins? Prostaglandin E2, F2 alpha, thromboxane A2. And not only that, the progesterone level will be decreased because of there is no conversion of pregnenolone into progesterone. So what will happen? There will be decreased progesterone levels will be present, and the alteration of these estrogen and progesterone levels will lead to contraction and labor process. And not only that, there will be increased release of interleukins 1, 6, 8. All this leads to uterine contraction and labor. So in brief, parturition cascade is there will be activation from the fetal hypothalamus, CRH, then ACTH, then from adrenaline, cortisol will be released. These cause increase in estrogen level. These estrogens, their action is to produce oxytocin from the placenta and even from the mother. These oxytocin, what they do? These receptors will be oxytocin receptors will be more at the fundus. There will be activation of these receptors, and not only the number will be increased, the sensitivity of these receptors to oxytocin will be increased. And here also prostaglandins will be increased. Their prostaglandin E2F2 alpha and progesterone level will be decreased. And there will be increased cap junctions, increased touch receptor and sensitivity. All this leads to uterine contraction and onset of labor. This is the etiopatho. Before going to the, we'll go to the etiopathogenesis. What was the physiology? So there is, one second. So what is the pathogenesis here? There are four processes will occur. They are premature activation of maternal fetal hypothalamo pituitary axis, number one. Number two, there can be inflammation and any infection that can lead to preterm labor or any decidual hemorrhage. And fourth one is pathological uterine distension. That is, for example, polyhydramnios or multiple gestation like that. Okay, we'll go to first, what are the causes for the preterm labor? What are the risk factors? Any history of previous spontaneous preterm birth, previous history of preterm birth. If she had any genital infections like candidiasis, trichomoniasis, or any instrumentation done, that also can lead to preterm labor. If she had any urinary tract infection and sexually transmitted diseases and bacterial vaginosis, cervical dysplasia, and previous history in the first trimester, if she had threatened abortion or previous spontaneous or induced abortions also can lead to preterm labor. Why induced abortions can lead to preterm labor? Because they can lead into cervical insufficiency. That can lead to preterm labor. Then bleeding of uncertain origin in pregnancy, anytime. Even in the second trimester, if she had bleeding, first time, not in the first time, then also she can have chances for the preterm labor. So, history of previous preterm birth, history of abortions, threatened abortions, infections, UTI, genital tract infection like STDs, cervical dysplasias, all these can lead to preterm labor. Not only that, cigarette smoking, any uterine anomalies, any septate, dialysis in uterus, if she had any assisted reproductive technology, if she conceived, if the embryos are more than 2, there are chances for the preterm labor. And already I told you, more stretching of the uterus, that is usually we'll see in multiple gestation and polyhydramnios, isn't it? And if the patient is underweight or overweight, both can lead to preterm labor. And any infection in the body, that is, for example, periodontal disease or ENT infections, even they can have effect on the labor process. And late registration of prenatal care, if she didn't have regular ANCs, there are more chances for the precautions she won't take. Nutrition is not corrected. And what are the infections she had? She won't get treatment. So late registration of prenatal care can also lead to preterm labor. And personal stress in the day-to-day life also can lead to preterm labor. And not only this, any medical disorders complicating pregnancy. For example, diabetes, pregnancy-induced hypertension, any renal disorders and placental disorders. For example, placenta previa, abruptio placenta, and any diarrhea, dysentery, appendicitis complicating pregnancy. All this can lead to preterm labor. And not only this, some fetal problems, that is any fetal IUGR, if there is any fetal IUD, if fetus is under distress or RH incompatibility, and fetal complications such as multiple gestation, all this can lead to preterm labor. Okay, so till now, are you clear? Whatever the labor occurs, 3 changes will occur in the uterus. There will be softening and dilatation of the cervix will be present. There will be uterine contractions leads to softening and dilatation of the cervix. And finally, the weakening and rupture of membranes. 3 physiological processes will occur in the labor. So, till now, are you clear? I'm telling once again, we'll go back. You should know the preterm, what is preterm labor between 20 to 37 weeks. That much is enough. Threatened is contractions present without cervical changes. Established is uterine contractions with effacement and dilatation. That you should know. And parturition cascade, you should know. CRH, ACTH release, acts on the fetal adrenaline, cortisol release. This leads to estrogen level increase. Estrogens, what they cause? Oxytocin release and prostaglandin release from the amnion, chorion, decidua and myometrium. And alteration in the ratio of estrogen and progesterone. That is, progesterone will be decreased and interleukins will be increased. All this can lead to uterine contraction and labor. This is normal. So many risk factors are present: previous preterm birth, abortions, threatened abortions, any infections, UTI or STD diseases, any bacterial vaginosis, bleeding of uncertain in pregnancy, history of trauma to the pregnancy period, cigarette smoking, uterine anomalies, multiple gestation, overweight or underweight, periodontal diseases, and if she didn't have any regular ANCs, low socioeconomic status, stress, and any medical disorders complicating pregnancy such as diabetes, hypertension, any renal pathology, or any placental disorders, placenta previa abruptio, diarrhea, dysentery, appendicitis. They are not given in this, but still, all these are risk factors for the preterm birth. And not only this, fetal factors also play. They are IUGR to the fetus, IUD, any fetal compromise that is in the fetal distress, RH incompatibility fetuses, and multiple gestation of the fetus. All these are problems for the preterm delivery. So whatever the changes occur, what are the factors responsible? There will be uterine contraction, softening and dilatation of the cervix, weakening and rupture of membrane that leads to preterm labor. So with this, we are going to the etiopathogenesis of preterm labor. See, what they will be, already I told you, premature activation of feto, hypothalamo pituitary adrenal axis will be present. There will be release of CRH and cortisol. So cortisol acts on the placenta, isn't it? Chorion, amnion and decidua, there will be release of estrogens. Already I told you, progesterone estrogen ratio will be changed. Release of prostaglandins. Prostaglandins will be released. Prostaglandin E2, F2, thromboxane A2 will be released. And not only that, even any bacterial colonization, what will happen? There will be release of increased human necrotizing factor. Interleukins will be released whenever there is infection. That is 168. And any pathological uterine enlargement, the stretch receptors will be stimulated. There will be mechanical stretch. There will be leading to interleukin 8 activation. Increased gap junctions. All these act on the chorion, amnion, decidua for the release of prostaglandins. And not only the prostaglandins, there will be increased proteases and increased collagenase. This collagenase will cause cervical ripening and insufficiency. All this leads to increased myometrial contraction, ripening, and preterm labor. So this is the etiopathogenesis. What are the changes will occur in the preterm labor? So next is how you are going to predict the preterm labor. First thing is assessment of the risk factors. So whenever the patient comes, take the nice history. See any risk factors she had. Okay, she had previous history of preterm labor, so she may go into preterm labor. This time we should be very careful. Or if she had any UTI, or if she had having any medical disorders associated. All these things you should keep in mind, and social economic status, everything whenever the patient. So assess the risk factors. Number one, pervaginal examination to assess the cervical status. This is very important. Cervical length is very important for the prediction of preterm labor. I will tell you later. This we can do by ultrasound examination. And number 4 one is detection of fetal fibronectin in the cervicovaginal secretions. And finally, biochemical markers. See here, clinical predictors of preterm labor. What are the clinical predictors? History, number 1. If she have a multiple pregnancy or polyhydramnias, any genital infections. And if she had any symptoms of PTL, that is preterm labor, I'll tell you later, you should always clinically should predict. Next comes the biophysical predictors. Biophysical predictors are what? She will have uterine contractions more than 4 per hour, or Bishop score more than 4, or cervical length less than 2.5 millimeters. This is very important. If the cervical length is less than 2.5 millimeters, 2.5 centimeters or 25 millimeters, whatever it might be, this is very important. And biochemical predictors are fetal fibronectin, and others are interleukin 6, 8, and human necrotizing factor. These are biochemical predictors. And coming to the short cervix, PVS is better if you can do cervical length at the 24 weeks of gestation. If it is less than 2.5 centimeters or 25 millimeters, you always predict she may go into preterm labor. So, always tell transvaginal sonography, it is better resolution will be present. So, if you take before 24 weeks of gestation, cervical length measurement, even though she didn't have any history, in asymptomatic woman, you can predict preterm labor. Okay, this is the gold standard method. Coming to the fetal fibronectin, what is this fibronectin? Nothing but a protein. What does it do? It just fixes the fetal membranes to the deciduum. So usually it is not present between 24 to 34 weeks of gestation. It will be present before 24 weeks or after 34 weeks. It is not seen in the cervicovaginal secretions between 24 to 34 weeks of gestation. And this ratio will be more than 50 nanograms per ml. If you can see fibronectin between 24 to 30 weeks of gestation, it's a biomarker. Okay. Presence of fetal fibronectin more than 50 nanograms per ml between 24 to 34 weeks of gestation, there is greater risk of preterm labor. Okay, we can take from the ectocervix and posterior vaginal fornix, high vaginal fornix, which is more useful. And false positives also can be present because of blood, semen, or contaminated samples. Then cervical insufficiency. What is cervical insufficiency? Inability of the cervix to withhold the products of conception till term. That is, if she had any cervical insufficiency, that time also there are more chances for the preterm labor. And other biochemical markers are interleukin 618, human necrotizing factor, already I told you, progesterone, salivary estriol. These are very important, and progesterone is also very important. At least you remember fibronectin, interleukin, progesterone, and salivary estriol. Okay. Till now, I think you are clear. Clinical predictors, biochemical and biophysical predictors, and diagnosis of PTL. How you will diagnose symptoms? What they will have usually, they'll complain of backache or something, pelvic pressure, something with lower abdominal heaviness or pelvic pressure they will feel. Usually they complain that, or sometimes they can have vaginal discharge, like leaking will be present, or increased vaginal discharges, or sometimes bleeding also. And they will say something is contraction like feeling they will get. Contraction and relaxation, they may or pursue pain. Okay, regular uterine contractions they may tell. And signs will be when you do PV, there will be effacement, 80% effacement of the cervix, dilatation, and length of the cervix will be definitely less than 2.5 centimeters. When you see in the scan, there will be funneling of the cervix. These are the signs. Then what are the investigations you want to do? So the patient has come. Then what are the investigations you want to do? Full blood count. Complete blood picture is very important. Then blood grouping and typing. Urine analysis is important. And not only that, blood sugar, renal parameters, RFTs are very important for any investigations. And cervical swab to be taken for, high vaginal swab is taken for predictor. What is that? Fibronectin. And ultrasonography is a must in these cases to predict the cervical length, placental localization, and fetal well-being. And serum electrolytes and glucose levels are all very important, and the tocolytics are advised. And how you are going to prevent? Whether you can prevent or not, you should know. Before pregnancy, you see, this time she had preterm labor. What are the advice you can give before pregnancy? If she wants to conceive again, always give these advices. Pre-conceptional folic acid supplementation at least for 1 year. It can prevent not only the birth defects but also the preterm labor. If she is alcoholic or smoking, they should avoid. If she is going for ART treatment, not more than 2 embryos could be introduced. And optimizing the work, not more than 6 hours of standing, working more than 42 hours a week, all may contribute to preterm labor. If she had any anomalies, that's why if she had preterm labor previously, all those anomalies to be corrected. And if she had diabetes, like chronic diseases like asthma, diabetes, and hypertension, she has to get them under control and any infections to be treated. So in the pregnancy, before pregnancy, folic acid, any uterine anomalies to be corrected, optimizing the work, any medical disorders complicating pregnancies or any medical disorder if she having before, they should be under control, and infections to be treated to be before pregnancy. What is during pregnancy? What we can do? We can give vitamin supplementation. Here also again smoking, alcohol to be avoided, calcium supplementation, and periodontal care is a must. And any genital infection to be treated, they should have good hygiene and they shouldn't have any stress. And cervical length measurement. This is gold standard. I am again repeating. Before 20 to 20 weeks of pregnancy, even though the patient is asymptomatic, do cervical length assessment. Then complete bed rest. Prophylactic antibiotic if she is having any infection in the second and third trimester. Low dose aspirin. Good food which contains antioxidants, fatty acids, and progesterone, that is maintain injection at full term depot, that is 17 alpha hydroxyprogesterone capiate. 500 mg injections every 15 days we can give till 36 weeks of gestation. And if she had any cervical incompetence, we can advise her cervical surplus. This is during pregnancy. Like this, we can prevent preterm labor. And how we are going to manage? The patient has already come with preterm labor with established pains. What you are going to do? Always transfer the mother to the higher center where the neonatal facilities are good. Okay. Then we have to start the antibiotic if we are suspecting any neonatal infection to prevent neonatal infection. And glucocorticoids we have to start. And tocolytics. Tocolytics play a major role in preventing preterm labor. Usually they will be short-term therapy. Why short-term therapy? One thing we can do, we can administer glucocorticoids. Why glucocorticoids we should do? To reduce fetal lung, to promote fetal lung maturity, and to reduce RDS and intraventricular hemorrhage. Glucocorticoids we have to give. Okay. Role of tocolytics. What are the tocolytics we can give? To reduce the pain, nifedipine we can give, terbutaline. In our hospital, usually we'll give nifedipine. Dipine is usually we'll give in our hospital 20 milligrams stat followed by 10 milligrams. Depends upon the contractions, TAD or QAD. Terbutaline we can give, magnesium sulfate. This is injectable, and ditodrin. These are the 4 drugs usually we'll give for tocolysis. Then what are the contraindications? Each and every person, any drug, there will be a contraindication, isn't it? Severe preeclampsia if she had, severe abruption if she is bleeding, or any chorioamnionitis, fetal death, already the fetus is dead, or either already the fetus is having any anomaly, or severe IUGR, or if the patient is already in established labor more than 4 centimeters. Even though if you want to give tocolytis also, it won't be fine. Then if there is already premature rupture of membranes, these are the contraindications for the tocolysis. Coming to the corticosteroid therapy, 2 drugs which they will ask you in exam, see, betamethasone, dexamethasone. Betamethasone 2 doses. How much is the doses? 12 milligrams, 24 hours apart. So this is the easiest dose. So today we will give one injection, tomorrow one injection. So 24 hours apart, 12 milligrams, 2 doses. Coming to the dexamethasone, we will give 6 milligrams, half the dose of dexamethasone. Because of the half the dose, we have to give more amount of injections, isn't it? So 4 doses we have to give. Every 6th hourly we have to give 6 milligrams. 12 hours apart, 12 hours apart we have to give. 4 doses we have to give. Here 24 hours, but here it is 12 hours. There it is 12 milligrams betamethasone. Here it is 6 milligrams. The doses are increased here. Benefit usually starts after 24 hours and lasts for 7 days. Okay, these are the things we have to do before going to the labor. So management of the labor, how we are going to manage? The first stage, we have to keep the patient in bed so that early rupture of membranes will be prevented. Number 1, oxygen, fetal oxygenation is very important. We can give oxygen mask to the mother. Epidural analgesia is of choice in these cases, and electronic fetal monitoring, continuous monitoring with the electronic fetal monitoring can be done. And usually preterm deliveries, they can have normal labor unless they are complicated with breech or abruptio, etc. And as soon as the baby is delivered, immediately shift to NICU. And the birth should be gentle, and usually the birth will be very rapid. And episiotomy to be given, as we know, and there will be any tendency to delay in the delivery of the fetal head, we can apply low forces and immediately cord the clamp so that we can prevent hypervolemia because the bone and hyperbilirubinemia. That's why we have to cord the clamp immediately in the preterm birth. To immediately shift the baby to the neonatal intensive care unit. And what are the complications we can predict in a low birth weight infant? See, pulmonary, RDS, we remember that. PIT, hyperbilirubinemia. Immunological, immune deficiency. CNS, intraventricular hemorrhage. Ophthalmology, retinopathy. Cardiovascular, PDA. Renal, electrolyte and water imbalance. Hematological, iatrogenic anemia or anemia due to prematurity. And endocrinological, usually they can have hypoglycemia. At least these things are very important. Okay, so we'll go back again. How we are going to manage this? Predictors, clinical, already I told you symptoms: backache, vaginal discharge, regular uterine contractions, effacement, dilatation, and length of the cervix will be decreased. Investigations we have to do, and prevention in the pregnancy, before pregnancy, and during pregnancy. That is important. And how we are going to take. Immediately transfer, we have to start the antibiotic if there is an infection to prevent neonatal infection. Administered tocolytics and glucocorticoids. What are the tocolytics usually will give? Nifedipine is a drug of choice in our hospital. First 20 milligrams start, followed by 10 milligrams PID or PID. Others are terbutaline, magnesium sulfate, and ritonavir. And contraindications you should know for these drugs. Corticosteroid therapy is nothing but betamethasone and dexamethasone. Beta they last definitely in exam. Ampoules are also present in your bio. Betamethasone is 12 milligrams, 24 hours apart, 2 doses. Dexamethasone is half the dose of beta, 6 milligrams, 12 hours apart, 4 doses. Okay. And how you are going to control the labor? Always keep her on bed. Oxygen mask should be present. Electronic fetal monitoring continuously should be done. And we have to think whether she can leave for vaginal or cesarean section, depends upon her risk factors. And the birth should be gentle, episiotomy to be given. If necessary, forceps can be applied, and cord should be clamped immediately. And always shift the baby to the neonatal NICU. And what are the complications are? Usually they can have RDS, PDA, hyperbilirubinemia, intraventricular hemorrhage, immune deficiencies, retinopathy of prematurity, water and electrolyte imbalance, iatrogenic anemia, and hypoglycemia. I think you understand this class. Thank you.